You are now listening to Testimonies with Terry.
All right, guys, I'm super pumped because on today's show, we got former WWE ring announcer, PFL MMA cage announcer, and singer-songwriter, the very talented, the very lovely Lilian Garcia. Lilian, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you so much for having me. This is so exciting. When I saw you reach out to my team and ask about, me being on your podcast, and I saw the premise of your podcast, I was stoked. I'm in.
Well, I was super excited to hear back from your team. This is a relatively new show. It's a smaller show, and I have a list of guests that I like to reach out to, and I have a section that's basically called like pipe dreams, where it's just like, okay, it'd be cool if they came on the show, but I don't know if I could ever get them. And so when your representation emailed me back, I'm just like, thank you, Jesus. This is amazing because I got to be honest with you, Lilian. This is a dream come true for me because the whole reason I started this podcast, one, I mean, God gave me the call, but two, your podcast inspired me to start up my podcast.
Oh.
When I heard, I'll never forget, my wife and I were driving home from her parents one night, and I put on episode 1 of Making Their Way to the Ring, and it was Brie Bella, and I was sucked in right away. I just loved how in that episode and in all future episodes, Lilian, you were able to make each guest so comfortable so that they could open up and be real and be raw and be inspiring, like your tagline says.
Thank you.
And I just felt like a fly on the wall in like a therapy session. Like I loved it. And that's what I wanted to emulate my podcast. I wanted my podcast to have that feel that like after you get done listening to an episode, it feels like you know that person. And you accomplished that in spades with your podcast, Lilian. So thank you for doing that. Thank you for inspiring me and just thank you for being here.
Oh my gosh, Terry, you just brought tears to my eyes. That makes me so happy, and I'm so humbled to hear that. And especially you saying Making Their Way to the Ring. That seems like a lifetime ago because that was my first podcast. And then, as you know, I eventually renamed it to Chasing Glory. And it's really cool to know what that podcast actually, how it has affected people. So to know that it affected you to start your own show, I'm honored. Thank you.
Yes. This is just such a blessing. And Lilian, I'm excited to get into your story today. This is what we do. We get deep and just raw and real and vulnerable with people's testimonies on here. And so I always like to start at the beginning, Lilian. So let's start off with, where did you grow up and what was family life like for you?
Yeah, I grew up in Madrid, Spain. Actually, my dad was a lieutenant colonel. And so I got there, I think it was a little bit under 1 or around 1 years old. And because I was living in South Carolina before, as I was told, because I was a baby, so I don't remember that. But I was born in the Canal Zone of Panama on the military base. And then when I was 3 months old, I moved to South Carolina, lived there till about 1, and then moved to Spain. And I grew up there in Madrid. My dad was stationed at the U.S. Embassy. So I grew up there until I was 8 and then moved back to South Carolina. So South Carolina's definitely have some roots there, but boy, what a difference between, going to South Carolina, from being a baby to coming back to South Carolina. I didn't know really, South Carolina, but it was quite a culture shock from Madrid, Spain. But my life in Spain was unbelievable. It was so amazing. I feel so blessed to have had a childhood like I did. Traveled a lot because we had to leave like every 6 months because of our visa. We had to leave Spain and come right back. And Mom was like, you know what? We're not just going to go to the border and come right back and turn around. Let's make a trip out of it. So when you live in Europe, you can go to Germany for the weekend. You can go to, all these different countries that we did. We went to Germany, Austria, Switzerland, would go to Italy. I mean, it's incredible. So, I mean, that was just in our backyard. It's kind of the same as if you live here and you're just going to go to Tennessee for the weekend or, California. But, that's how close all those other countries are. But that's what we did. So I grew up knowing all the different cultures, which was incredible.
That's amazing. How do you think that impacted you as a kid being able to experience all that?
Definitely that because it's not the same as if you're in the States and you're going to Tennessee or you're going to California, it's pretty relatively the same. Sure, you're going to have your accents. They're a little different between North and South. Your food, your Southern food is going to be so, amazing. And then you've got your pizza in Chicago or something like that, those the staple foods. But when you're going to such different cultures as far as Italy, let's say, the language is different, the food is different. You're going to Germany, the language, the food is different, the culture is different. That for me was so awesome because I really got a taste of the world, let's say, where it was so different in all these different cultures. But it made me have a openness about being able to receive people in my life that were different than me. And I think sometimes in the States at that time, especially, that's what was missing. And we can talk about what happened in my transition.
Yeah, no, that's amazing, Lilian. And do you have any siblings?
Yeah, I have a sister. She's 4 years older. Yep. And it's just her. And she and I were super close growing up. I mean, I remember we'd go to school together, and I remember there was one time she was sick and my parents I wanted to stay home with her. And they were like, nope, sorry, she's going to be in bed all day. You need to still go to school. And I'll never forget them trying to drag me out of her room. And I was just holding on to as we're going down the wall of the hallway, I'm grabbing onto the corner of the door. And no! I mean, it was just brutal. I just remember being traumatized that I was going to school without her. That's how close we were. But I remember that they let me go after school and pick something for her. So I got a stuffed animal so I could bring home to her. And, as she was sick. And we were just two peas in a pod, so close.
That's amazing. What was it like growing up and going to school in Spain? I would imagine it was was it bilingual for you, or was it just strictly Spanish speaking for you? What was that like?
So we got the choice. Actually, my sister got the choice. I kind of followed, 4 years later. My mother had asked, do you want to go to the Spanish school or do you want to go to the American school? The American school was part of the whole military umbrella. So my sister chose she wanted to go to the American school. So then I followed suit. And when I went to kindergarten, I didn't know I knew two words. I knew two words in English, and that was hello, goodbye. That was it. Because Spanish was always my first language. So I remember being terrified and went to kindergarten, and I had a little sign on my shirt that said, all I can say is hello and goodbye in English. And my teachers were telling my mother to start speaking English to me at home, which I was furious. I did not want to hear my mother speaking English, especially with an accent. It irritated me so bad. And I was just like, this is wrong. And yeah, it's change, right? You just kind of fight that change in the normal. Yeah. It wasn't normal for me to hear her speak English, even though she was fluent in English. And then they wanted me to, speak to all the kids in English, and I was having a really hard time with it. And I remember I found one other girl in the class that spoke Spanish. And so when we were at recess, she and I would go off in the corner and we'd be speaking Spanish the whole time. I was just like, oh, I need this. And it's that sense of needing normalcy. You need normalcy. So as human beings, so yeah, I mean, it was a struggle, but it was really cool in the end because I got to learn a different language, and learning at such a young age of 5 years old. That's why I don't have an accent speaking English. But when I switched to Spanish, yo puedo hablar todo en español y tampoco tengo acento. So that means when I switched to Spanish, I can speak in Spanish and not have an accent either. So that's been very beneficial. That was really cool. And we were able to have the hours that were normal for the U.S. So when we transitioned from Spain to South Carolina, it wasn't such a shock because we still ended our school day at 3 or 3:30, where the Spanish school system, because it's siesta, yep. You go home and then you come back. So you don't end your school day till about 5:30.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So.
Wow. And then, Lilian, as far as growing up in a military home, I think some people, when they hear that, they think that, it must have been very strict and orderly, and you got to keep your things very clean and tidy. Was it that way for you, or what was that like?
God, you would think that my dad would have been like, this is it. You know, being a lieutenant colonel. He was in the Army for over 20 years. He was so opposite with my sister and I. It was crazy. My mother was the one that was just like, this is the way it's going to be. She was the one that cracked the whip. And, you know, cleaning, let me tell you, oh God, when you talk about cleaning. But I realized later why she did this, and we can get into the story as to the transition when I came, you know, to the U.S. But she would really, in Spain, I don't remember, we actually had a maid in Spain. It was part of the military package that my dad got. But it was when we came to the U.S., to Spain, that everything changed, and cleaning became a huge part of my life. But it was, there was benefits of it, because she would literally walk around with a white glove and would really make you clean. And the benefit of that I learned was to do things right the first time and pay attention to detail. So I did learn that, the paying attention to detail, not cutting corners, doing things right, you know, not having to go back and redo it. So that was beneficial. But what wasn't was the reason that she had my sister and I clean so much was because when we transitioned, I don't know if you want me to go here already or not.
Sure. Yeah,
but
go for it.
When we transitioned from the U.S. to Spain, from Spain to the U.S., she had a really hard time with it. She wanted to stay and live in Spain. That's where her heart was. And I get it. I love Spain. I feel like my heart is there as well. But she didn't know how to be able to transition out of that. Where my sister and I, we were able to, and my dad, she got into a full-on depression. Really, really bad. And her and my dad did not really have a good relationship. So I really feel that the reason she had my sister and I cleaning all the time, and I mean, we came home from school and it was like chores, but I'm talking lots of chores. In other words, you had no time for anything else but chores and then your homework, and then that was it. So, and then Saturday was a full day of chores. So you didn't have, I didn't have the let's go be with friends on Saturday kind of deal. And then Sunday was church. So I realize now that was her way to keep my sister and I in the house because she didn't want to be alone. So it was not healthy in that respect. That's why we were doing so much housework, is because of that, because that was her way to keep us there. And then the white glove treatment, all of that was literally, again, to keep us there. The benefit of it, like I said, the silver lining of it, the way God turned it into something positive was that he turned that situation into me being able to be really good at paying attention to details, you know, like I was saying. So it really is that saying, what somebody means for harm, God will turn it for good.
Amen.
And yeah, so there it is.
Amen. I'm curious, Lilian, how did that impact your relationship with your mom? And like you're saying, she was actually the one who was more kind of the strict one and would lay down the law and obviously, you know, the cleaning stuff. How did that impact the way that you viewed your mom or you interacted with your mom?
It was tough because, you know, I had the first 8 years, I just remember just loving, like just pouring love. She would just pour and just give us so many adventures. Like I just remember even in the summertime, the movies there ran pretty much everything. Madrid is kind of like New York City where everything's open all day, all night long, but also open are the theaters. And so you could go to the movies at 2 a.m. And so it was really cool that mom would go to bed in the summer and then she'd wake us up. And we'd go to a movie theater or something at 2 or 3, whatever it was. And then we'd get out of there and we'd go have hot chocolate and churros. And then we'd come home and then we'd crash, we'd go back to sleep. And then, and like I said, it was the summer, so we could do this. And that was fun. It was just, that was so great. So to experience that, to then having where all we were doing was chores and and she was in such a full depression. And then because my sister was 4 years older, she actually started, leaving the house. She started dating. I was 8, she was 12, but then by the time, my grandmother lived with us too, thank goodness. My grandmother poured, I really feel like if it wasn't for grandma, I don't know where I'd be, because she poured all this love where mom was not able to for those years because she was so depressed. My grandmother gave me that. But with my sister, she got to the point where she was out of the house or she was with friends and all. And then my mom's not having a relationship with my dad. My grandmother dies. So it just leaves me. And so I was the one that got kind of the lashing of everything, of what she was going through. And so that was really, really, really tough to handle for so many years. And then I revolted. I left the house about 19 years old. I said, that's it, I'm leaving. My sister was like, well, you're not leaving me behind. So we moved out together, which was really hard on my mom for both of us to live out together, move out together. But I just knew I couldn't do it. I couldn't be in that toxic relationship anymore. And I, rubbed heads with her for many years, and it was really tough because she had these glimpses of being like amazing and loving, and then all of a sudden this other glimpse of just so much. She was dealing with so much pain. She didn't know how to handle it, and she didn't believe in therapy, and so there was no avenue but to just lash out at the world. She was just so angry at her life. But thank goodness, the beautiful story is we made up for. I mean, we still kept relationship throughout the years, but it was tumultuous. And it wasn't until later on, years later, after my dad passed, actually, that it's like I got my mother back. I got the Spain mom back. And it was beautiful to see that that I was able to repair that relationship with her and how loving she was with me. And it was just, it was incredible. I took care of her all the way to the end. And all she ended up doing in the last 3 years was pouring love out to me. And I have to tell you, Terry, at first I was like, what does she want? This is a little weird. But right. She had made the switch. I feel like God just showed up in a big way and was able to heal that relationship before she passed. And so I'm grateful for that.
Wow, what a blessing. I'm glad that you guys were able to get that relationship back towards the end of her life there. What was it like, Lilian, kind of going back again, when you were told that, hey, we're leaving Spain and we're going to America? I mean, you were technically there before, but you had no recollection of it.
Right.
What was that like for you?
Well, I was excited because, I was an American and I never remembered living in America, right? So it was like, oh, okay, we're going to being an American and I'm going to go to America. And I'd seen so many pictures, and I remember I had a brochure forever in my room of the Statue of Liberty, and I was like, I can't wait to go to New York. And so when it was decided that we were going to move, we were originally going to move to Miami, but we wanted to visit my aunt who lived in New Jersey, and she came and met us in New York City. So I was just so excited. My dad's like, we're going to land first in New York. We're going to stay there for a little while. We're going to go see the Empire State Building and the Statue of Liberty. And I was just like, so excited, and Times Square and all these things that I'd heard about. And when we got to New York and I saw that the Statue of Liberty was green and in my brochure it was white, not realizing that the reason why is because my brochure was in black and white. I was mortified. I'm like,
oh my goodness,
why is she green? And then this is before Giuliani had kind of cleaned up Times Square. So I get to Times Square and it's dirty. And you got to understand, in Madrid, there was not one piece of paper on the floor. I mean, it was just spotless. It was so clean. Wore dresses to school. Like you just always hit the streets nice, presentable. So it was a shock to come to Times Square and all of a sudden it's not only dirty, dirty, but then they've got a lot of during that time, you had a lot of X-rated stores, you had a lot of prostitutes that were in the streets, just a lot of homeless. So I'm looking around and I just remember this at 8 years old impacted me in such a way that I was shocked. And then by the time we got to Miami, we're staying in this motel as we're looking for permanent housing. And Miami at that time, this was in the 70s, Miami at that time was really bad because the drugs had infiltrated and were getting brought in through Miami. And it was really, there was a lot of violence. And I just remember Mom telling us, like, be really careful when you go outside and play. And we were only allowed to play in this one little section in the backyard, and she was always eyeing us. And I got this uneasy feeling. I was like, this is not what I experienced in Spain. And then sure enough, one night, I won't go into the detail, but let's just say it was a really bad evening that made my mother go, no, we're not staying in Miami. And we're moving. We're going back to South Carolina because that's what she knew. And so that's when we ended up moving to South Carolina. But it was tough because, again, I was used to different cultures and accepting people from different. The kids in South Carolina were not. I would say most of them. I don't know. I can't speak for everyone. But when I got there and I wore dresses to school, and even though I spoke English, they knew I spoke Spanish. I came from Spain. Immediately I was branded an outsider. Immediately I'm different. And so I was immediately bullied. And that was tough because we didn't have cliques in Spain. I never had to deal with any of that. So to find out that there's cliques and there's the popular group, and then of course I'm like, well, I want to be in the popular group. I didn't even know what that meant, but sure enough, I want to be in it. And then trying to force myself in the popular group, which is the worst thing you can do. So yep. it was rough because I was not safe at home with my mother and her, depression and all, and I wasn't safe at school. So, like I said, thank goodness for my grandmother.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's what I was going to ask is, like you said, people at school obviously weren't accepting of you. You talked already in depth about how mom was not in a good place at home. If it wasn't for grandma, man, what do you think you would have done?
Well, between my grandmother, my dad was, working, so he was busy. But between my grandmother pouring love on me until she passed when I was 14. So, I mean, I knew her. She lived with us in Spain too. So she was like my second mom until I was 14 years old. I don't know what I would have done without her. I mean, there'd be times I'd crawl into bed with her at night and she'd just hold me. And I'm telling you, I feel like that was the protection that I needed for sure. But music, I started singing when I was 5 years old, and music had always been a part of my life. And so I have to say, if between grandmother and music and just singing and loving music so much and just diving into that, but my security place was the closet. Like I always ran into the closet, and it became, when she passed, it was very, very traumatic for me. Very traumatic. I mean, I remember, there was an open casket, and I remember when they said it was time, I had kind of kept myself composed, and when it was time to close the casket and I knew that was the last time I was going to see her, gosh, and right now, just the memory of it wells tears in my eyes. Yeah. I just fell apart. I literally poured myself on her. They had to pry me away from her. And yeah, it was just, I knew that the one person that loved me unconditionally, that was, she was healthy to love me that way, she was gone. And that was the last time I was going to see her. But thank goodness she's been in my heart ever since then. And I even wrote, when I did my Spanish record, I wrote a song about her called Angel. So if you speak Spanish, you'll understand the words. It's all to my grandmother. Yeah. She was something. So
man, I'm so thankful that God placed your grandma in your life during those years so that you had that sense of safety and security and love. Really just, that one source of love that you weren't really feeling from anywhere else. Yeah. You talked about 5 years old, you started singing. Does your family have any history of music and being good at singing, or are you kind of the anomaly in the family here, Lilian?
Well, it's my sister and I, because she sings too. And what was wild is we really didn't even know this. I mean, she and I kind of would sing around the house and stuff like that, but it wasn't until my father wanted to play guitar. He wanted to learn how to play Spanish guitar. He hired a guitar instructor. He came to the house and he would start playing these songs. And my sister and I would start singing along. And the instructor's like, wait a minute here. What's going on? Because he loved it. And so he started playing song after song after song, and my sister and I singing. And he was just like looking at my dad going, oh my gosh, you've got something here with these two. And my poor dad never learned how to play the guitar, because the instructor would come to the house and all he would do was play songs so that my sister and I could sing. That was it. And but my dad would sing along too. And my dad had a really nice voice. Never made anything of it, but really beautiful voice. My mother, on the other hand, is tone deaf. She did not have a good voice, unfortunately. She always loved to sing, but she just didn't have it. But yeah, so we got it from my dad. But that's how my sister and I ended up from there, getting on stage, singing together. And we even were in a band later on in South Carolina. We were in a band together. So it's just always been in us.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. You mentioned that was a big coping skill for you throughout school and high school. So would you guys do like talent shows? Is that when you girls were in the band?
Yeah, we did. I remember we did, remember the Gong Show?
I don't remember
the Gong
that.
Show? Okay, well,
No.
they had the Gong Show. And so basically it's the same X Factor. Is it X Factor? Yeah, that's a talent competition, right? X Factor? No, America's Got Talent. America's Got Talent. Yeah. American's Got Talent. You know how it's got the 3 X's?
Yep.
Okay, that's basically you're getting gonged, right? But the Gong Show was the same thing, except for they had this huge gong. And if you got gonged, that was it. You had one time that the judge would get up and, he'd hit the gong, you were out. So the local community decided to do their own little gong show. And so my sister and I, we entered, and you get scored. There was 3 judges, and you can get scored as high as 10. So it's kind of like Dancing with the Stars meets America's Got Talent, right? So we were performing, and we did this whole little skit where she and I were singing, and it was you and me against the world. And we're talking about it's you and me against the world. Sometimes it feels like you and me against the world. And there's an instrumental part in the middle where she hands me this box. It's a surprise, and I open the box, and it's a teddy bear, and I'm holding on to it. And she's doing the big sister, little sister thing. We had everybody in the crowd just crying. Even the other parents, like the parents of the other contestants, were just crying. And of course, we got the perfect score of 30. We did not get gonged. We ended up winning. And it was just our harmonies and everything that we just, there's something about siblings when they harmonize, when they sing together and they harmonize. Wow, it is unbelievable. So it was really cool. We did that. We were in plays, and then we did the band together eventually. Yeah, it was fun.
That's awesome. And guys, if you have not heard Lilian sing, put this interview on pause. Go find Lilian stuff on Apple Music, Spotify, YouTube, wherever. Lilian, you got like an angelic voice, like just the pipes that you have. Like it's just, I love hearing it. And obviously, being a WWE fan, we were blessed to hear that for many years with the national anthems. And I think I saw recently on Instagram that you're kind of back in the studio working on some new music. Is that true?
Yes. I'm so excited, Terry.
I am too.
I'm glowing. I'm literally, my friends look at me and they go, did you meet someone new? Because, we'll talk about the fact I'm single. But yeah. I'm like, no, it's nothing to do with that. I'm still single. I was like, but I am glowing because these songs are pouring out of me. I've been missing singing. I've been missing recording. It's been ages since I've done an album. Just because my dad got sick, took care of him. My mother got sick, took care of her. I had to deal years of dealing with her and dementia and all. And then my marriage fell apart, dealing with that. Then I took a year to heal from all of that, which is how I found my current church, which we can talk about. But it's during that time, the last thing you're wanting to do is really sing. It's just, it wasn't in me. Now it's like all the pain that I went through, all of those things that I've gone through, I'm pouring it into this album. And because I found Mariners, which, do you want me to talk about that?
Sure. Yeah.
So at the end of 2021, this was, my mother passed away in March of 21. My marriage fell apart like November of 21. And then in December, I was broken from the years, prior. My dad had fallen. It was a lot. I had 3 moves. I had health issues. It was just like one thing stacked against the other, within that span. And it was just like, God, this is too much. And my friend that I had just recently met, it was wild. She definitely came into my life for a reason. And I just recently met her, and she said to me, she goes, do you want to go to church with me? And I said, well, I was like, I've actually not been going to church because the church that I had found where I had recently moved, it was nice, but I wasn't really connecting. And so it's not, I don't want to, I mean, you know, you got to find what fits, but it wasn't fitting for me. I wasn't coming out of there and feeling like a sense of I had the Holy Spirit in me or anything, you know? And so it was kind of more of a chore. And I didn't like that. I was like, wow, the feeling that I'm having, that I'm feel like I have to go to church instead of looking forward to going to church, that's something's off, right? So she said to me, she goes, you know, I think you should go to Mariners with me. And I was like, I don't even know what that is. She goes, it's a non-denominational church. So, you know, all different religions and all. But it's not in your grandma's church, not the steeple, right? It's in a huge arena. And I had never been into a mega church. It's called a mega church. I'd never been in one of those. And so when I walked in and the band starts playing and I'm like, wait, am I at church or am I at a rock concert? It was so cool. I had not been really, you know, exposed to pop rock worship music. So I was in heaven, and I literally was just like trying to absorb it all. The message was incredible. And I left there and I'm like, wow, can I come back next week? Like actually wanting to come back, right? So I came back the second week, and that's where I just felt like Jesus came like right through me. Like it was just that feeling of, I need you up on stage. That's all I heard. I need you up on stage. And so I mean, it's wild because when you're not privy to knowing that you can hear the Holy Spirit or the Jesus or anything, like I didn't know this. I always prayed, but I didn't listen. I didn't know that you could hear things. And so all of a sudden I'm hearing something, and I'm kind of, I'd had a spiritual encounter like years before, but it was wild. I mean, this was wild. So I decided to go immediately, and they have what's called Next Step outside where you can talk to somebody. And I said, look, I just got here. My friend introduced me. I was like, but something's telling me to go up, you know, be on stage. Do you guys need singers? She's like, I'll make that happen. As far as an audition, I auditioned. They were like, when can you start? So I started singing with them, and that was it. I was hooked. And so every now and then, like about twice a month, I sing at Mariners. It fills my soul in such a way. And I do all 5 services over the weekend. And I just devote my time and, you know, volunteer my time. It's just been incredible. And that's where I decided to do a Christian album. But when I say Christian album, for me, it's still not your worship music. I still have to be true to myself. I love pop rock music. That's just who I am. It speaks to me. But I sprinkle in messages of God. I sprinkle in how it's affected me. I sprinkle in the transformation that it's done in my life. So it's not like Bible thumping. It's not, oh, glory God, or whatever. I think there's perfect songs for that. But in my calling, this is calling me to talk about my life, but sprinkle in how God has affected that and touched every aspect of it.
Yeah.
So,
and that's the beautiful thing about music, right? I mean, there's all sorts of worship. You can have like your very direct worship songs, like you were saying, where they are talking about the glory of God and everything. But then I think of the band Skillet, right? Like they do an awesome job of like kind of riding that line where they're sold out for Christ, right? There's no doubt about that, but they're not explicitly saying that, but the messages are all encompassing that. And so I'm thrilled to be just on the lookout for this album, Lilian. When, I don't know, how far along are you? Do you have any ETA for that?
I don't have an ETA. I mean, my goal is to get it done this year. Now, if I could release it this year, that'd be awesome. I don't know if that's going to happen. I don't want to force it. I don't want to rush it. There's no reason for it. But if I could get it at least recorded this year, and then maybe it gets released at the beginning of next year, I don't know. There's a lot of work still to be done. But this new producer that I found, and it was through Mariners, The bass player connected me to this producer. So God's having a hand in all of this. And the fact that he and I, we already feel like we've known each other for many years. We're writing some songs that we are so excited about. And he turned to me the other day, and this was like the third time that we'd been together. He turned to me, he goes, you do realize that it takes usually months of building a relationship to be able to create what we're creating. And I said, I know. And I remember the very first day. This is the very first day we met, right? We're having a meeting. We're talking about what I'm looking for. And then we're wrapping up the meeting. And he goes, so you want to just sit and write something now? And I'm like, yeah, why not? Let's do it. We write this entire song. We're listening back to it. And I remember he's sitting in front of me. I'm standing over him and I'm just watching the monitor. And I slap him in his back and I'm like, dude, this is amazing. And I'm like, I started laughing and I said, wow, I feel like I've known you forever. Here I am slapping you in the back. But that's how comfortable we felt. And so and he's right there with me. He understands what I'm trying to get at. He understands what I'm trying to accomplish with this. And he understands my stories. He understands how to help me express this. And I feel really blessed right now that I have him in my life. The fact that I even told him, I said, the fact that your name is Angel is wild to me because I wrote a song about my grandmother and it's called Angel, right? So I feel like my grandmother's kind of helping orchestrate this as well. And my parents. I mean, like I said, I ended such a beautiful relationship with my mother and I was pretty much had one with my dad. So I know that their hand is in this as well. I could feel both of them. I feel all of them like coming together and helping me with this. And yeah, I know I'm glowing because of that. Like this is a labor of love. I'm being very vulnerable. I think the most vulnerable that I've been on any album, any other album. Really talking about some heavy stuff, but I think that in the end, it's going to help people, and that's my goal.
Yeah, that's what it's all about. And now I'm seeing what your friends are seeing as far as that glow. Because as you were talking there, Lilian, yes, you're right. You were glowing. And man, it sounds like the Holy Spirit has been all over this album. And yeah, you know, as far as timing, God's timing is always perfect, right? So obviously the sooner the better for me, but I want you, to just operate in God's timing. And I'm going to be on the lookout for that. I'm definitely going to be staying tuned for that. Lilian, I want to delve deeper into your whole journey of going to Mariners. But before we do that, let's kind of back it up some. So high school, you know, we kind of talked about that. When you graduated high school, did you know what you wanted to do with your life? Did you have any inkling as far as, you know, did you want to chase music? Did you want to chase something else?
Music
what was that like?
I mean, it's funny because I first got into where I thought I was going to be a surgeon. I wanted to go to medical school. I wanted to be a heart surgeon. I started doing biology courses, all of these things. And then somebody was presenting, I think it was a dean that was presenting the whole, what it looks like to graduate and go through being a doctor. And I'm like, 12 years of schooling. And at the time, the thing was, I had put so much pressure on myself to be perfect. I went through that whole perfect phase where I almost had, a meltdown when I got an A- one time in one of my courses. That's how much I was so focused on being perfect. And I was thinking, oh my gosh, to put myself through 12 years of school because I was studying all the time, barely sleeping. I studied so much. And I was like, I can't do this. I know I can't do this. And then thinking of working in a hospital, I was like, I don't really like hospitals, but I'd be working there every day, right? So I decided, no, I want to be a singer, you know, and my mother she was great. My parents were really supportive and they just said, look, you can be whatever you want. Just please do me a favor and go to college. That's all. Just take 4 years, get your BA, and then you go be whatever you want. So that's what I did. I went to, you know, when I went to college, I then met with this dean. I went into what I switched it to journalism. Because I thought journalism was more like radio, like I'd been doing radio. I thought it was more like that, broadcasting, you know. Nope, there's a lot of writing. And I don't really like to write. I've gotten to where now I'm a much better writer, and I've gotten to where I like writing. I like writing my captions. I'll come up with quotes all the time. Like if you look at my Instagram, I will pretty much always try to write something that's inspirational underneath my captions that share a piece of my life and how maybe it can help you. But then I love photography, and this is where it's going. So on my photography that I've started exposing, I'll put a quote that I'll come up with. And I just look at the picture and it just speaks to me, and I'll put it down. And that's been a lot of fun. But that's also because I was able to meet with the dean who said to me, he said, this is a dean in media arts. And he said, look, it looks like you really like being in front of the camera, where you like singing. And I had already been doing some commercials, and I had already been a DJ and all. And he goes, why don't you learn the behind the scenes? So why don't you get into media arts? We learned how to edit. We learned how to film, producing, directing, photography. And I was like, this actually sounds really intriguing. As soon as I started, I was hooked. I mean, I would stay up all night long editing and not even realize I stayed up all night long and not care that I lost sleep. Like, that's how excited I was to do it, which really helped me, because when I did Chasing Glory, oh my gosh, I was doing everything pretty much on my own for the longest time. And
I know what that's like.
Yeah. You edit your own show, you setting up the cameras. And at the time too, I mean, I had 3 cameras, it wasn't like just Zoom or whatever. And most people were just doing video or audio podcasting, and I was doing video podcasting. So, but I learned all of that. I learned lighting and then photography, and I have so much fun taking photos. And that's what I'm saying. I now share it on my Instagram, and that's been cool, how to incorporate both. So it was a blessing that I had a dean like that set me down. And then I was able to, graduate. I graduated cum laude. I graduated honors. And it was just something that I love. And when you pick something that you absolutely love, you will do well at it.
Amen.
So, yeah.
Amen. So then, Lilian, how do you go from that to ring announcing for the WWE?
So I had graduated college. I decided to move to New York City because it was the closest thing that I could feel to Madrid. I was still longing for what I had as a child. The city life, I'd love that. And so I moved to New York City, which is still way different than Spain, but but I moved to New York, and then I end up finding an agent. That agent puts me on commercials, and I was still singing. I was singing with a 14-piece orchestra. I had done a show for like 2 years at a Spanish restaurant where I was singing in Spanish. I always incorporated singing somewhere in my life there. And then, the agent was the one that said, hey, there's an audition for at the time, WWF. I thought he meant the World Wildlife Fund, but no. And I ended up going to this audition, which the best advice that I took was him saying, look, you never know. Just go to the audition, because you never know. And that's good, because I was literally about to sign management. I mean, my goal was music. And I went to the audition, and I said this as I'm heading to the audition. I said, God, if it's meant to be, make it obvious. If it's not meant to be, make it obvious. I still use that prayer. I still feel like that prayer every time. It doesn't fail. If I'm supposed to be, let's say, in the right relationship, God, if this, if this is, what did I say? I can't even think what to say. If this is meant to be, make it obvious. Not meant to be, make it obvious, right? So same thing with a relationship. Same thing with a job you're supposed to take. Same thing with whatever you're supposed to take. The key is whether you are listening to the red flags or not, because he will present the red flags to you. And I didn't necessarily pay attention to the red flags in certain relationships that I got into. And I paid for them. I paid for it in the end, but when I got with this audition, it ended up presenting to be obvious, because when they called me and they said, we'd like to try you out for 2 to 3 months and you could quit at any time, that was pretty obvious. I was like, oh, I'm going to take a chance. And I walk in and they put me ring announcing the very first day on the job. So it was like, poop, you're in.
Yeah, August 23rd, 1999, Ra's War. That was your first night on the job. What was that like? Had you been a fan of wrestling at all before that, Lilian?
Yes.
Like, did you have any idea of what you were getting into?
I've been a fan. My dad and I were like this watching wrestling as I was a kid. It's one of the amazing memories that I have with my father, because it was also the one thing that he and I had together without involving my sister, without involving my mother. It was something that it was just he and I. I remember he surprised me. He took me to the Township Auditorium in Columbia, South Carolina. I got to see Andre the Giant, Ric Flair, Blackjack Mulligan, loved him. I got to see them live at the Township Auditorium, which recently, in all these years, I hadn't gone back. And my sister asked me to go with her. She was a former Miss South Carolina, and they were having like I think it was their 80th year anniversary or something like that on Miss South Carolina pageant. And so she asked me to go with her. And so I went, and it was in the Township Auditorium. And I remember I walked in and I looked to my right and I went, that's it. I know that is where I sat. Like I can remember what that viewpoint was of looking at the ring at being such a young age.
Oh, that's so cool.
It was just a really neat thing to have that. And then fast forward to, telling my dad, guess what? I'm going to start working at WWE. He's like, what? So that was really cool.
Yeah. Yeah. 15 years you spent there, Lilian. And man, you came in at probably the most popular period in wrestling history, the Attitude Era. I mean, your co-workers, Lilian, Stone Cold Steve Austin, The Rock, Triple H, Chyna, Undertaker, Kane, Chris Jericho, names go on and on and on. Again, there's so much there because you were there for 15 years. But Lilian, what stands out to you about your time with WWE?
What doesn't stand out? I think that's the question. I mean, what a blessing. And, Devon Dudley and I spoke about that one night when I was backstage visiting WWE recently, and he was one of the producers. And he goes, man, we didn't know what we were in at the time. We didn't know what a era that it was going to be, right? To be part of the Attitude Era. And now you look back and was like, between the Dudley boys and you said the list goes on. Shawn Michaels, you got the Kurt Angle. Yeah, the list goes on of the legends. These aren't just wrestlers that I worked with. These are all legends that I got to work with and got to be friends with more than anything, and Batista. And, I got to be really close with them. I'm getting ready to go back to WrestleMania here in April, and I'm doing an autograph signing, and they just gave me the advertisement for it, and sure enough, there's Kurt Angle and myself that this guy's going to bring in for this event. And Sean Morley, Val Venus,
Val Venus, yeah.
Wow, this is so cool. Like, that's why I love doing the autograph signings, not only just to be able to connect with the fans again, because I love the fans, love, but also to see my coworkers. They're not just coworkers. It's one of those things, you see them and you feel like you're seeing your brother or your sister. It is a family that we create, and we went through so much, and especially when you travel together and you're dealing, there's adversities, there's obstacles, there's a lot of things that happen. So when you get to experience that with someone, and you see them years later, there's just a bond. I remember being at the airport when I was at PFL. I was at the airport, and all of a sudden, AJ Styles comes up to me. He goes, what? And I was like, what? And then Rey Mysterio's right behind him, and we're like, oh my God. And we're giving each other the biggest hugs and hanging out. They were on their way to Dubai. I was on my way back from New York at an event with PFL. I was going home, and we just hung out for hours while we were waiting for the flight and reminiscing. And again, it's like I was talking to my brothers, and that's what's so special. Just recently, 2 nights ago, I went out. One of the camera guys said, "Hey, I'm here in LA. Do you happen to be around? And you want to get some dinner?" And I'm like, "Absolutely!" And we hung out, and we were talking about all the things that we'd been through and our times there. And it's like being with family. It's incredible.
It's amazing. That's amazing. I'm like envious of you that you got to have that experience, that you can call these people friends. But Lilian, I'm also curious, for the majority of your run with WWE, the women there, weren't presented how they're being presented now, right? Mm-hmm. Back then there was more focus on them being eye candy and focus on the bodies. And I'm curious for you, being around that, being in that environment, being in that locker room, did that present any struggles for you with body image or insecurities for you, or was it actually empowering for you? What was that like?
Well, what was great about me is I was in a position where they asked me early on when I first got hired if I wanted to have a stylist, if I wanted someone to dress me, or if I wanted to pick my own clothing. And I said, oh, I want to choose my own clothing. And they gave me that option, which was really nice. So I chose all my outfits, every single one of them. I think in the 15 years, I hired myself a stylist. I believe she was with me for 2 to 3 months. And it was just because my schedule got so crazy. I didn't even have time to shop. And this was like year 13 or something like that. So it was way down the line. And it was fun to have her come up with a different perspective, maybe of what I would have chosen for myself or something. But I always made sure that for me, I wanted to stay classy. I always feel like there's a way to be sexy but classy, and I think you just have to be true to yourself. And I love the fact that WWE allowed me to do that. They allowed me to be true to myself. And sometimes it was a little bit more conservative than during the Attitude Era, but they didn't have a problem with it, which was great. And what I love too, when the girls had to do bikini contests or something like that, you wouldn't hear them complaining. That was just something, they signed up for it, right? And I feel like everyone needs to have the right to do what it is that they're feeling comfortable with. And that, I know that there was one storyline that I got asked to do with when I was working with Viscera.
Yep.
And they wanted to put me in a bikini contest. And I was uncomfortable with it. And what they didn't know why I was uncomfortable with it. And it was because I actually had suffered from an eating disorder. I had been bulimic for some years. And I had already been well, but talk to anybody who's overcome anorexia, bulimia, any kind of body dysmorphia, it still stays with you. It really does. I stopped purging, but I still wanted to look a certain way, or I still felt a little bit like I was never perfect enough to expose myself, So the thought of being in a bikini contest where people's eyes would be on me was mortifying. And I always respected, I was like, wow, how you girls can go out there and just, I'm like, wow, because I can't do it. I can't do it because of the way that I was feeling, right? About my own insecurity. But I remember expressing to them how I was uncomfortable, and they just rewrote the storyline. And it got where I would go out there in a towel, and right before I was about to enter the bikini contest, Viscera's music hits and comes down, and he sweeps me off, and now I'm gone for 2 weeks, and nobody knows where I've disappeared. So that storyline was not supposed to be the original storyline. I was supposed to be in a bikini contest, like literally be in a bikini contest, but I was uncomfortable, and they were like, okay, so let's rewrite this, and that's what was so great, is that you could have that freedom to, all right, well, let's do it this way, And so that was so cool that they respected that and just rewrote the storyline.
Yeah, and like you were saying earlier, Lilian, when you struggle with an eating disorder, even when you overcome it and you do get well, it does stick with you. A lot of my listeners know, you probably don't because we're just meeting, but I suffered with an eating disorder. I suffered with anorexia when I was in middle school, high school, a little bit in college. And yeah, I'm where you're at. I'm at a place where I'm well, but it is in the back of your mind at times. Yeah. And so I'm wondering for you, Lilian, when did you kind of experience bulimia, and how were you eventually able to come to that point where you had control over it instead of it having control over you?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I'm going to say, I'm so glad that you're speaking about what you went through, because as a man, that's not heard of very much. But right. I know there's a lot of men that experience anorexia and bulimia, and they feel worse because they really feel like they don't have anywhere to turn to because it's so much more spoken. Even I actually volunteered at this place with eating disorder place, and it was all women. It was all women dealing with stuff. And if there was a man in there, I'm sure he would have felt a little uncomfortable. So kudos to you for speaking out, because it's only when we speak out that people can feel more comfortable about dealing, and talking about their issues. Amen. But I just remember it got to be really bad. I never had a problem gaining weight. I early on, I just had a fast metabolism. Everything was great. I hit college, whoa, and my metabolism, it was like towards the end of high school and college, my metabolism just shot. And I started gaining all this weight, and I didn't know what to do with it. And mentally, again, because I was the perfectionist, right? So mentally, it was a real struggle. Learned how to purge, ended up thinking that it was okay. It wasn't spoken about how bad it was for you at the time. So I thought it was just, okay. And my worst was my wake up day, I should say, was when I purged 15 times that day. Wow. And I mean, I literally went to McDonald's and I would pig out, and then I'd go over to the 7-Eleven and I'd purge, and then I'd buy everything there, and I'd go and eat it in the car, and then I'd go to Burger King and I'd purge. And I mean, it was just, and I was out of control. And what it was is that my life was out of control. So it was the one thing that I thought I had control over, was being able to just eat whatever I want. I was feeding my emotions. And then I felt like the purge was kind of like purging what I couldn't control, right? But what ended up happening is that I lost control of that too. My whole life was out of control. And so when I purged, and 15 times that day, and when I purged blood, and I looked at the blood in the toilet, and I was like, oh, I have a problem. And that was the wake-up call. And I knew that I needed help. And I went and sought a counselor. And that's how the process started of the healing. It took years. I'm not going to lie. It took years. It really, as you probably know. And there were times that I did really well. And I tried to take the mentality of AA, where you will, they give you your chip at 1 year, 2 year, you celebrate it. But I started seeing that for the 1 year mark, boom, I would sabotage myself. And it just kept happening. Okay, another, I'd sabotage myself. So I stopped counting. So I can't even tell you to this day how many years. I mean, it's been years since I've been clean, but I can't tell you how long, because I stopped counting on purpose. So for me, the AA mentality of the chip every year just didn't work. Yeah. But now it's just one of those things. I don't even want to. I mean, the thought of it that makes me sick. So yeah. I feel really happy that I'm able to be in that place. But I got to tell you, like, just this past year alone, the healing that I've done through the church, I ended up diving into 2 courses. When I dove in, because I didn't just dive into the worship and be a part of the worship team, but I also, I found the church in December. In January, I had auditioned, and I started singing with them in February because they wanted me in January, but I'd already had my schedule full. But in January, I joined what's called Rooted. It's a 10-week program that they have with other women that you get to actually incorporate a community with, which is really, really important. And they've supported me so much in everything that I've been through that I don't know where I'd be without them, seriously. And then another program called Remedy. And so Remedy is for anyone that wants to remedy anything in their life, whether it's alcoholism, whether it's pornography, whether it's, they've been through sexual abuse and they want to remedy that, codependency. It seems like anything you're dealing with, really, this program, it ended up to be 8 months. It doesn't have to be 8 months, but we really took our time through the program, and it was through 10 other women that I experienced, grew so much in those 8 months. The girl that came out of that program is not the same one that entered. Amen. And that's why I feel like I'm glowing. I'm glowing and that's why I feel like my writing is so much better. That's why I feel like this album is going to be incredible, is because I've grown so much as a human being. I took myself on. Trust me, it's not easy. There were days that I did not want to go to the meeting. Like, it was every Monday night, and I was like, I don't want to go. And I don't feel like I'm worthy, or I don't want to talk about this, or every excuse. But then it was like, you're going to go. And that's why it's important to do this with people, because I'd reach out to them, and we have a text thread, right? And I'd reach out to them and go, guys, I'm just not feeling it. And then they'd be like, no, you get over there. We're counting on you. We need you. So we would help each other. And I'm like, okay, I'll see you guys soon. And then I'd get there, and then I'd feel so much better for being there. Yeah. And I'd talk it through, and crying, oh my gosh, we shed so many tears, all of us, But it's through that unpacking and the layers, and I dealt with so much trauma. I dealt with the trauma of my mother, and I dealt with the, other traumas that I hadn't really focused in, and I was able to heal all of that. And through the program that the church went and letting Christ into my life like never before. And I was just, in a way, it was kind of, I felt scared to do it. I've always believed in God, but I kind of felt scared to do it, and definitely scared to talk about it, because I didn't want to be seen as a Bible thumper. I didn't want to be seen as somebody that felt like they were, all holier than thou. No, because I'm still broken. But I know that the growth that I've been able to do, the healing that I've been able to do, and now I'm helping others do the same thing. And through even this record, what I'm able to do. Now knowing what I know, this is the way to go. I have never, Terry, there's not one person that I've ever encountered that said, I gave my life to Christ and I am so sorry I did that. Amen. I feel so much worse for it. My life just, turned upside down, because there's not one person that I'm encountering. And I have to say, before I forget to mention it, Molly Holly was the one, Nora is her real name, but Molly Holly was her character on the WWE. This is when I was married to Paul. So I've been married twice. I haven't gotten it right yet, but I know that was a lot because of the trauma that I'd been through. I am not going to feel ashamed about it. It's me who made selections because of my trauma that I was not in. Put it this way, I think you really need to be healed and a whole person before you can make the absolute best selection for you. Now, there are many people that have made great selections that weren't whole and all of that they got it, and God bless them. That's great. But there was a lot of choices that we made based on our trauma that are not going to, it's going to end up backfiring. And that's what ended up with me. I didn't choose well because of how unhealthy I was. I can look back and see that now. Yeah. And so when I was married to Paul, God bless him. He's just an incredible man. He really is an incredible man. But I was going through a lot of trauma, and I had married the wrong person because I unfortunately was not in a place where I actually clung on to him because I felt so unloved, and he loved me so much and I needed that love. It's almost like my grandmother, right? I needed that protection, that I just went ahead and went into that relationship because of that. But I unfortunately wasn't feeling the exact same way for him. And that was the turmoil that I had, because for the many, many years, I thought I couldn't receive love. I didn't know how to receive love. And so there was something wrong with me. But when I was trying to deal with so many therapists, oh my gosh, I dealt with so much therapy. And Molly looked at me, we were in Boston. I'll never forget. We were backstage at Boston. She said, therapy's great and everything, but don't forget that God's actually there for you. And I looked at her and I started thinking, I said, no, I think that God's a little too busy for me, because I couldn't feel him. I couldn't hear him. I couldn't feel him. And so I just thought, I just don't matter enough. And so he's dealing with bigger issues. And, but she planted something in me when she said that. And she was also the one that had turned me to some of the pop rock music, not like the worship, not like what I had encountered when I got into Mariners, but and she said, I really think you'd be good for this genre. Oh, okay, whatever. She's laughing now. She's like, I knew you were going to do this. But we were literally texting just last week. And I was like, oh my God, I've been to the studio. You were right. This is amazing. Oh my gosh. And, but she was the one that planted that seed. And also when I got to interview Sting on my show, Chasing Glory, and he was so open about how he turned his life around when he turned it to Christ, how he was so in the negative in his life to then how he feels so alive and his life turned around. And I was like, oh, this is so cool. People are starting to talk about it really, open, and this is neat. And then I hear Undertaker just on my feed on Instagram, how he was on this show and talking about how Michelle had turned him, he says, I always believed in God, but never really let him into my heart like I am now. And he starts getting emotional, talking about how Michelle really turned his life. And then I text Michelle immediately. I went, oh, I can't believe, wow, what, impact you've made on Undertaker. I said, imagine the ripple effect that the Undertaker can do to help others, right? Because somebody that respects the Undertaker so much, to hear him talk about God and Christ, it's like, wait, this is cool. Then just last week I saw Shawn Michaels, talking about it also openly. So it's beautiful that more and more the superstars are speaking about how God and Christ is transforming them. And now I'm feeling less like taboo to talk about it, or less freaky to talk about it. In fact, I just really want to tell everybody, seriously, this is the answer. This is the way.
Amen. Amen. And I was going through your Instagram, Lilian, and you went to, is it called Harvest Crusade?
I did. Yeah, that was so, I'd never been there before. It was so cool.
And in your caption, you had said something to the effect of, what good is having all this if I don't share it with others? And I think that's like the nature of the gospel right there. It's like you said, Lilian, once you experience the love of Christ personally, it's too good to keep to yourself. You want everyone to have that. You want everyone to at least know about it, right? At the end of the day, we all get to make that choice, but it's just so cool how you've gotten to this point, Lilian. It sounds like growing up, you've always had a faith throughout your life, but it almost sounds like you felt like God was like this distant being who was just kind of like watching over you and, wasn't paying much attention to you. But then when you walked into Mariners and the Holy Spirit came upon you, it sounds like that's when Jesus Christ became personal to you. Yeah,
I surrendered. That was when I completely surrendered. And I just remember the feeling of like, when I felt that, I went, oh, it was just undeniable. And then I said, okay, just take me where you want me. Put me where you want me. Like, what am I supposed to do? And then, I don't ever like to force things on people. So you won't see me on Instagram going, you got to do this. You got to, but I will share and say, this is what's helped me. Yeah. So if you want help, this is a path that I took that's helped me. And I think that's what's beautiful about Christ is he doesn't force himself on you. God does not force himself on you. You have a choice. You have a choice to make. He's like, I'm here whenever you're ready. I'm here, but I'm not going to force myself. And that's what's been such a beautiful thing is to I said, I'm not going to be a hypocrite and tell people about this favorite show that I just watched on Netflix, or a favorite restaurant that I went to, or, this sporting that I did that was so cool, or the way that I changed my body doing, this diet or this fitness, thing, whatever. I'm not going to do that. And then not also say, by the way, this, going to church helped me with this program helped me with that, getting in community has helped me with this, whenever I'm down and low, I can actually reach out to those girls and they know what I'm feeling because we've been through it. We went through the trenches together. We get it. We know where our hearts are. We know each other's traumas, and so getting that close to someone, if they know more about me than some of my best friends, know about me. So being able to say, guys, I am in a low place. Like, this is what's happening to me. And then them being able to say, okay, this is how you're way back, or this is why you're feeling this, or, Satan's trying to get to you, or whatever. It just helps you. Yeah. And so that's been the blessing out of all of this.
Yeah. And like you said, like, you didn't just go, you dived head first into all this, you're going into those groups, worship team. I think what really impresses me is just the focus that you have on community and accountability around you. I think that's so important, especially as kind of almost like a new believer, right? I was in the same situation where I grew up and always thinking, I always believed in God, but always thought he was, distant and just getting ready to, punish me when I screwed up. But then once I accepted Christ into my heart and I got people around me that encouraged me with that and loved on me, it's just man, this is what I've been missing my whole life, just like you said. And so, Lilian, what have you learned about yourself, through the Father, through your relationship with Christ? What are you learning about yourself?
I'm learning that I'm not alone. That's the biggest thing. I am definitely not alone, even though I am single, even though, I'm living alone for the very first time in my life, because I always had roommates. When I moved away from mom and dad, I either had a roommate, I lived with my sister, I lived with, my husband. There was just always somebody in my life. And so this is the first time that I'm living by myself. And so for a while there, I was just like, oh, wow, this is hard. And I wasn't doing well. Right. And I'm so grateful that I was in this program while this was happening. And I had this community of friends, because I'm like, guys, I am lonely. And they're like, remember, sit with the Bible, start reading. I listen every morning. I just downloaded the Bible app. If you're busy, and I have a pretty, go schedule, because I'm doing, about 10 projects at the same time. But they're projects that I love to do. So, but I'm not making an excuse for not spending time with God. So what I do is I downloaded the Bible app, and I'll put, Genesis or whatever, and let it read it to me while I'm putting on my makeup, or while I'm cooking. All right. There's always a way that you can incorporate. And that in itself makes me not feel alone. And then I make sure to have dates. I'll say, all right, girls, who can get together, Tuesday night, who can get it? And so again, community, don't isolate yourself. It's not like I pack my day being with someone, because that's going to the extreme, right? It's okay to be on your own, have time with God, have time with Jesus, learn to be okay. Even if you have to cry through it, learn to be okay by yourself. But now more and more, it's been over a year now that I've, been divorced now. And so I'm a whole lot better. And now I'm like, oh, I got this, but I don't ever want to get to the point where I want to be alone, because I'm not. I like sharing my life with someone. I know that I am made to be in a companionship with someone, just like God, created Eve to be with Adam. Like he wants us in unity with someone. But I'm not going to be desperate to get someone. I'm not going to also lower my bar. I have a really high bar as to the man that, that I'm going to finally get it right, Terry. That's the thing. I'm going to finally get it right. Why though?
Amen.
Because I've healed. I worked on myself. I got rid of my baggage. So when I go into this new relationship now, I'm going to choose so much better, because my worth is up, right? I feel like before I wasn't making good choices. I seen the red flags, but just not paying attention to them, because my worth was low. Now my worth is high. My worth is high, which means my bar is high. And I keep praying to God, like during this time while I'm waiting, there's a few things that I know why I'm single. I'm single because I'm supposed to be okay to be alone. Be okay to be alone first. Then you can bring somebody into your life, because it's not going to, that person that you're not going to be with them just because I'm going to be with you and I'm going to hold on to you because I don't want to be alone. No, you're okay alone, but you're going to be with them because you actually like their company and you want to grow in Christ together, right? So you're not going to make choices out of desperation. And so that's why I've been alone for this time, so I could actually be okay to do that. My album, the things that are coming out and certain songs that are coming out, I can only write them right now in the feeling of being by myself. And just a few days ago, when we finished this one song, right now we'll see if the title changes, but for right now it's called Someone to Call My Own. And when we finished the song, I went, I know why I'm still single, because that song would not have come out of me if I would have been dating somebody right now. Because that's what I want, is someone to really call my own. And so all the lyrics are all about that. But I said, this is going to be a song for anybody who's single. This is a song for the single people, right? So I'll be able to write a song. I'm able to write a song as a single person right now. I'll be able to write a song as someone that's in a relationship, So it's been a journey that I'm just trusting God in every single facet of it, and knowing you've got me here for a reason. You've got me here for a reason. But to know that God is also preparing the man that's going to come into my life next. I don't want him to come too soon, where he hasn't dealt with his past traumas, where his bar is not high, right? Where his worth isn't high. I want him to be as healthy as possible when we meet, so that when the two of us meet, we can truly form an incredible relationship, because we are both healthy and we both know that we have to do, it's a triangle. We have to be not just us, but God has got to be in the mix of this relationship. It's the only way for me that I know it's going to work. And so it's kind of exciting how this is going to happen. I'm like, am I going to meet him at a club, at a restaurant? Is somebody going to put us together? I don't know. I have no idea what's coming into my life, but it's actually exciting to know something's coming, because I know I'm not going to be single for the rest of my life, but who knows how long, right? And I'll keep waiting until it's time, until the right time.
Preach it, Lilian. Preach it. That's a message right there. Like, legit, like, that's a message so many women need to hear, but also men as well. I mean, on the flip side, like you said, like, be okay with being by yourself, so that you're not relying on that other person to meet needs that only God can meet for you. And as you were talking, Lilian, it is so obvious you're in love with Jesus Christ. Like, I just want you to know that, like, it is so obvious. And one thing that came to my mind is that when you talked about having high bar and high standards for a man, as you should, I get the picture that your heart is so in alignment and close with Jesus that whatever man becomes your husband has to go through the heart of the Father first before he gets to yours.
Absolutely. I need that. I really do need that. I think it's important. I want to be able to share. I want to have conversations like this that you and I are having with someone that's very special to me. I don't want to feel like if that person is not a believer and doesn't understand, and then I'm just glowing and I have to, oh my gosh, I wrote the song and the Holy Spirit like talked to me, and they're like, I don't know what you're talking about. That's awkward. It's kind of weird. And I also don't want to have to be like trying to talk somebody into loving Christ or God. I just don't want that. I really want someone to come into my life that understands that already, that gets it, that lives it, that breathes it, and that we can actually create this relationship. But I'm going to say, anybody who's single out there, not only be okay with being alone, but work on yourself during this time.
Yeah.
Take this time to truly dive in deep into some of those past traumas, whatever it is, the past choices, why you've made the choices that you've made in your life. Really study it. Work with the community. Get into church. I mean, look, just find a good church. People make excuses all the time. They're like, I can't afford a therapist. Do you know how much it cost me to do Remedy? For 8 months, every Monday night, it cost me $8. And that was to buy the book. That was it. Like, that's incredible.
Yeah.
8 months. And we had a facilitator. She was a volunteer, and she would show up every Monday night, and we did these workbooks, and it was incredible. And that's through the church. So find a church that's got these types of programs. You would be amazed. They've got grief counseling. They've got, whether you're in drugs and alcohol, pornography, codependency, you name it, they've got a program for it. And you get immediately attached to this community that's also experienced it, so you don't feel alone in that. And that's the beautiful gift that I've been given during this time, even though sometimes I was kicking and screaming. I'm not going to lie. There's times I'm like, why? Why can't I just, Valentine's is coming up. I don't want to be single. It's not the best. I can remember last Valentine's going, next Valentine's, things are going to look way different. Well, guess what? They're not. In a way. The difference is that I'm okay, and I have my Valentine is Jesus Christ,
Yes, amen.
And I actually got this ring. It's not on my wedding hand. It's on the other one. But it's 2 crosses together. You can see that, right?
Oh, cool. Yep.
Isn't that cool?
Very cool.
And I said, you know what? I'm married to Jesus on that. That's why I say it's very, very special to me. And so I'm not alone, but I just keep telling him, work through me. Let's do it. Let's get the best Lil he can get. And then I can be in a relationship and actually have a lot of fun. And my partner and I don't have to be wasting time trying to handle dealing with cleaning up our baggage. instead, we can go out and mission and be there helping others and going on these mission trips. I want to do some mission trips for sure. And yeah, just love on people and nurture and help. And we don't have to be bogged down with what we've been through, because now we can use that to be like, I went through that. Yep. But guess what I learned out of it? I went through this, but now I have so much empathy. I was bullied so badly by these girls that I have so much empathy for people that have been bullied. I wouldn't have experienced that if I didn't go through it myself. I wouldn't know what that feels like. But that's when something happens to you, traumatic, just know God's going to use that for good. He will in the end, even though if it might not make sense in the time. My divorce did not make sense to me at the time. And now it's making all the sense of the world. So I wish him well. I wish him the best. I am not a person that is bitter. I am not a person that wishes malice on anyone. I don't care whose fault it is, whatever. I give him many blessings, and really, really hope that he will allow Christ into his heart, or maybe he has, I don't know. But that's on him, right? And that's all I can do. And now it's like, okay, let's move on.
Yep. Yeah. Romans 8:28, all things work together for the good of those that love Jesus Christ, right? I mean, that's it right there. And Lilian, I have no doubt that God is going to bring that right man into your life, that, like you said, you're going to get it right. Because you got Jesus in it now. Right. And I know right now that he's preparing a man for you as he's preparing you for him. And, man, I'm excited for that day to come, but I'm excited for just the journey that you're on now. Like I said, it's just so obvious that your heart is for Christ. And Lilian, you've been so gracious with your time. One more question for you. As you look back at all that God has done for you over the last year and a half now, when you reflect on his goodness, what comes to mind?
How healing he really is. If you let him in. That's the key. You got to let him in. You got to surrender. You got to be like, you know what? I've tried to control my life all these years and I haven't gotten it right. How about I just put the sword away, put my I know it all away, like put all of that and just say, I'm here. Do what it is you want with me, and just show me the way. Literally, just show me the way. And as soon as I did that, the healing that has been placed in my heart is incredible. Because, there's a lot of things that I will eventually talk about in my life that I've been through that people don't know. A lot of the traumas that I've been through that were pretty heavy. And I was able to heal all of that. And that's, I think, more than anything, if you just know we all go through stuff. We all need to understand that we all go through stuff. When you look at Instagram, be careful, because you're just seeing people's highlights. You're not seeing what they've been through. You're not seeing what they're currently going through. You're not seeing no one's going to start posting a bunch of negative stuff and crying, and they're just not going to. And so you got to be careful in feeling alone and that. And just let him in and let him heal you. It's a beautiful thing. And just being okay and just really realizing you can be happy. You can be happy and you don't have to self-sabotage, and it is possible. And, yes, we're going to go through stuff, but I read this a long time ago, and it is my motto. 10% is what happens to us. 90% is how we react. Yep. And that's in every situation that I now encounter. I go, if it's something traumatic, I go, God, I know you're in the mix of this, and I know all I'm going to do is my reaction is not going to be over the top. It's not going to be any of that. My reaction right now is going to be just trusting that you've got your hand in this and keep my composure. Just keep my composure.
Yes. Lilian, I have absolutely loved this conversation. This has been such awesome. This has been such a joy and blessing for me. And I'm just so thankful for God for this. Like you said, you have a ton of projects going on, Lilian. How can people keep up with you? Where can they follow you?
My number one place is Instagram. It's at Lilian Garcia with one L in the middle. And it's a friend of mine actually was asking me to do this, and I was like, you know what, I'll give it a shot. I just launched my subscription channel. So you can go on there and subscribe. And so for people that don't understand what that is, you just pay a very low fee, monthly fee. I mean, it's like nothing. It's like, I don't know. I think it's like $4.99. It's so cheap for the whole month. And I create extra content just for your eyes only. And that's where I'm actually able to give some wisdom that I call it beach wisdom. So I'm at the beach and I give these different thoughts, different things that I've learned along the way. And hopefully those nuggets, you can actually, apply them to your life, and it makes you somehow better in your life, helps you out. I do these behind the scenes where I talk about, for example, the first one that I launched was The Rock and I did this famous backstage interview on SmackDown. And so I break it down and I talk about the different facets of the interview, how it came about. So it's a whole behind the scenes. And I'll be doing that more and more with all the different story angles that I was involved with at WWE. I think it's fun for people to hear the behind the scenes.
Yeah.
Photo shoots, whether it's, maybe I'll release the photo itself on the main page of Instagram, but if you go to the subscription channel, you can get the behind the scenes footage. It's fun. And it's a place where I do a social chat. Like the other day, I was like, to my network, I was like, hey guys, how's your day? And then boom, everybody starts coming on. I have people from Malaysia, Taiwan, Canada, the UK, South Africa. We were all around the world, and we were just texting back and forth to each other. And that's been really cool, having that connection. So it's really neat. I'm actually having a lot of fun with it already. So I invite people to join me on the subscription channel. LilianGarcia.com has, the main website page of stuff. And yeah, I'm in the transition because I just left PFL, and I had 19 years solid of ring announcing. It's been 23 total with, doing some independence in between and all that. But it was a chapter that now I'm moving on. I never say never about announcing. I don't ever do that, but it is time for me to transition into something new. I know that I'm working on the album, right? I know that there's a couple of the projects that I can't talk about that I'm working on, but I'm in the transition phase, and I'm really having to rely on God to lead the way. I'm going into I'm not going to panic because I've had security for many years. I'm not going to panic because He's going to reveal it, and it's going to be better than I even thought it was going to be, because I'm taking a chance. I'm taking a leap of faith as to I've got to grow, and I've got to leave my security blanket. Announcing was my security blanket. I've got to leave that to be able to get into the next phase. So we'll see. You guys can follow that journey. And then on Facebook, it's Lilian Garcia official fan page on Facebook. But that's mainly on my channels. Twitter, I'm on. It's at Lilian Garcia. I'm on here and there. But yeah, I know it's a mouthful, but there's a lot of stuff that I'm working on. So
yeah, and I'll post all the links so people can easily find that and follow you. Lilian, I want to leave you with this. Earlier this week, I was driving home and I was listening to your song, "I'm Over Being Under in Love." And I just really felt, I really felt the Father speak to me and said, you know what, Terry, Lilian is never going to feel that way again, because now she's over in love. Like, she is filled with my love now and forever. And now she realizes it. And I just wanted to encourage you with that you're never going to be lacking love now, Lilian, now that you got Christ in your life. And I mean, as you're finding out, just living the single life now. But I just wanted to encourage you with that. And thank you so much for taking the time to come on this show. Hope we can stay in touch, and God bless everything that you're doing.
Yeah, God bless you and what you're doing, because doing these shows is not easy. I mean, I know firsthand. So, and I put Chasing Glory on hold. We'll see what happens. When my mom passed, I put that on hold. I had to listen to my heart, though. And God was like, right now you need to mourn. And that's what I did. And then when my marriage fell apart, I was like, I can't even handle it. And I want people to know that they can actually just let go of certain things. And who knows if he'll come back? I don't know. I'm not trying to force it. We'll see. But it's great what you're doing with your show. It's great how you're impacting people, and I appreciate that. And I got to go back and listen to my song. I forgot the words of it. So now, thank you, Terry.
Thank you.